welcome to the UI UX Design with Figma two-part series with the Digital Lounge this semester. My name is Sean. I'm the manager here, and I'll be the instructor for the next 2 weeks as well. So this is two parts. So today we're gonna go over some kind of intro stuff, just getting you familiar with what Figma is and how you can start to do it for some basic design stuff. And if there's time, we'll kind of delve into some more kind of advanced things as well today. And then next week, it's going to be mostly about anything we didn't finish today. And then animating and prototyping. So Figma is a collaborative design tool that is mainly designed for like digital products, so websites, apps, or stuff. It has a lot of cool features to actually simulate how the website would work or the app would work when you actually finally publish it. And that's what we're going to be doing next week. So we're going to get going with setting up our Figma account. The thing that's really nice with Figma is that they give you kind of like a better version of Figma just for being a student at a university with having a .edu email. You can just do like the basic starter plan if you want, but they do have like some kind of limitations. But I'll show you how to get the student account. So if you go to figma.com on a browser, you can do any browser. I'm just doing it on Safari because I'm not signed in. Typically, when you create your account and then when you go to figma.com, it's just going to take you right into the app. So right here on this website, you find this pricing tab right here. And these are your different options for this plan. You can do the starter plan. This is like the free one. Anyone can sign up for this, even if they're not affiliated with a university. If you really, really love it and you want to unlock more, you can pay. But if you want the education plan, you just scroll down underneath all of these, and it's kind of hidden. But there's this Figma is free for students and educators link right here. And you just click on that link and it'll take you to a new page. And on here, you just click this Get Verified button. On this new page, there is this no account create one at the bottom. And when you click create one, it'll prompt you to select with your email. Make sure you use your USC email because it'll automatically identify you're using a .edu email. And so it just verifies you for this education plan right away. You do that, and then you click continue with email. I can't simulate the rest of this because I've already created one with my USC email, but it just does some basic kind of things. It'll send you a verification to your email to say, yep, this is me, stuff like that. Okay. So I'll repeat this one more time and then I'll let you free to do it. You go to figma.com in a browser, you click on pricing. Underneath all of these pricing plans, there's this Figma is free for students and educators. We click on that link. On this page, we click get verified. And then on this tab, we can find this no account, and then we click create one here. And then you put your USC email and continue with email. While you are all working on setting up your account, I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about like UX design in general, about like what are some different roles you could find in this field to kind of see what might spark your interest if this is a avenue that you want to go down in your career path. So I just have six kind of example types of different positions within the UX design field. There are more with some different specialties and stuff. These are just kind of like the six most common ones you might see. So the first one is just called UX designer. This is kind of like a grab all type of role. So this is someone who kind of starts with stuff, identifying a problem statement, maybe talking with customers and with users, like what's your pain point in this part of the workflow? And then doing all of these different mock-ups, trying these different things to see, okay, what in this website or app could be improved to kind of solve that problem. And then after they do the mock-up, you run some tests with some users, kind of getting their feedback, incorporating that in. You're taking it basically from idea to the final. If you are working at a kind of larger corporation, they might split this up into multiple different roles. but typically at smaller teams, it's just like there's like a UX designer who kind of does everything. There's also specifically UI designer. So the UI part stands for user interface. So anything that you see on the screen, where the UX stands for user experience, which is just like everything you see on the screen, but also kind of like how they're feeling while they're working through things. What are their workflows, stuff like that. The UI designer one is mostly like focused on just design. You're not doing too much about like talking with users or customers or stuff like that. Just let me design this icon to put on the website. Let me design the layout of the app screen, stuff like that. A product designer basically is our typical UX designer role, but plus there's a little bit of business strategy involved in there. So this is probably you're kind of working more with a company to kind of say what are the long-term goals of this project, stuff like that. There is the UX researcher role, which this is one who is kind of like that user champion. This is someone who does a lot of interviews with users, does a lot of testing with them to kind of figure out what do they like, what do they not like, what's working with them with the app, what's not. Is mostly going to be into like the actual like let's research what the problems are and let's figure out how to fix it. The UX engineer role, this is kind of bridging that gap between design and development. So we're going to be just using Figma to learn how to design something. And if you actually want to build it and deploy it, you have to kind of learn a whole separate skill set. The UX engineer type of role kind of does both of those things. They'll be the one like designing the screens, designing the stuff, but then also turning that into code. And then the last one I have up here is the UX writer. So this is a pretty specific one, and this is basically everything that you see on the screen, but the words. So like making sure that the button names are kind of clear, making sure that any sort of kind of written work on a website or an app kind of meets standards. Something that I always like to show is just kind of this design deliverable that's created pretty early on in the process. This is called a wireframe. And this is like once you've done some initial kind of research, once you've kind of started to decide to work on this thing, you first start and you focus on the layout and the composition of the screen. So in this case, right, these are all different sections of just, I want to see how the screen's going to look at the end. I'm not worried about what colors I'm picking. I'm not worrying about words, the specific imagery, because there's a chance that I don't have this yet, right? If I'm working at a larger corporation and I'm, hey, design this app, design this website, but the copywriter hasn't gotten the written work yet, or the photo shoot hasn't happened to take photos. This is what I can start with just to kind of look at the layout, the composition, and then once I get those things, I can actually start putting it into the design. So we can just jump right in. When you now go into your Figma account, you should see something like this, but probably minus all of these files because I've worked on things before. You most likely have not. So let's just kind of go through what this is. This is your kind of like Figma home base. And so on the left side panel, right here, you'll see your name up here. And when you click on that, you'll get some options. So the first option you get is your theme. By default, it's just going to match what your system theme is. So in my Mac OS settings, I have do dark theme. So this is going to be in a dark theme. If you have it set to light theme on your computer, it's going to do that. But you can also manually toggle between light and dark as well. If you like one more than the other, I like most people like the dark theme a little bit better. There is also some further settings here if you wanted to kind of change your display name, if you wanted to add a profile picture, if you wanted to do some stuff about your notifications and stuff like that. That's all in your settings. It's your pretty typical settings menu. Then there is this option for getting the desktop app. So Figma both works in the browser, but you could also download a Mac OS or a Windows app to just show up on your computer. There's pros and cons to both. The pro to having the desktop app is that if you're gonna work on like the plane, for example, or somewhere that has a little kind of spotty internet, the desktop app doesn't require internet. so you can just use it wherever you would like. The browser-based version does require an internet connection. However, it doesn't take up room on your computer. And if you're someone like me, I always forget to delete things. And so I keep on getting notifications that my computer is reaching storage limit. If I were to download Figma, that's just adding like 400 megabytes of an application on your computer that you might not need. There's this community profile. We'll explore the community a little bit later today. This is basically a place where you can design stuff and publish it for other people to kind of copy and remix and do things. We're going to do that, but in reverse. We're going to take things from other people. Some companies, even like Apple, they'll like have their whole design system up there so that you can kind of copy this like kind of top bar in my Mac OS to kind of simulate that on the actual website that you're building or stuff like that. And you can log out if you need. This add account is if you're gonna, for some reason, have multiple different Figma accounts and you just want to be able to toggle between them, you can do that here. Down here, we have a search bar. So as you start to kind of create file after file after file, if you kind of don't organize it all, but you just want to remember how to find it, the search bar is super handy because you can just search for things. Your recents we'll go through in a little bit. This is just like this screen over here. And then the community is that place where you can find all of these different things that you can just copy and play around with. This is also a great way to kind of figure out how people have created something. So if you like this, for example, you can just copy it. You get to go into the actual Figma file. It doesn't mess their thing up. It creates a copy for you, so you don't have to worry about, oh, I deleted all their stuff and I screwed them over. It's just a copy. Um, so yeah, we'll go through that more in a little bit. Your education plan will give you this little team. If you want to add other people to your team, you can. If you want to work with friends and whatnot, you do that in this admin setting. Your trash is going to be your anything that you've deleted. It'll be kept in the trash for like 30 days before it's fully deleted. Resources is if you going to be more helpful if you're working on like an actual team, but if you're going to be building a bunch of different things for the same brand, this could be helpful. You basically build templates that you can just easily use more and more and more. If you're going to use something across a bunch of different files that you're using. And then projects and drafts are just ways to organize your files. I'm going to go back to my recents here. You can see that we have all of the recent files that I have right here. If I hover over one and I want to favorite it so that it's quickly accessible over here, it's just this star icon. And then I can see that right here. There are a bunch of options up here as well that you'll see. So these are just basically different apps within this Figma ecosystem. Figma design is like the standard tried and true Figma. This is where you create your design files. This is where we're going to spending pretty much all of our time over the next 2 days. FigJam is going to be a collaborative whiteboarding tool. So you just open it up and it looks like a blank kind of whiteboard with dotted lines, almost like a bullet journal. And then you can add sticky notes, text. It's a way to get collaboration with other people, kind of do some quick ideation. Figma Slides is their version of PowerPoint or Google Slides, can create presentations. Figma Buzz is more for brand design teams. So this is asset production, any sort of promotions, event materials, digital ads, social media posts, etc. Figma Site is going to be if you actually want to build a website and publish it through Figma, you can do that with Figma Sites right here. And then Figma Make is their AI thing. So like many other tech companies, Figma's adding a bunch of AI. Make is basically you just insert a prompt of what you want it to make for you. You click make and it generates whatever you prompted it to do. And this last one right here is a import thing. So if you want to bring in like a Photoshop document to keep working in Figma for some reason, you can do that right here. So let's all go underneath our team over here. And let's go to this all projects. We're going to create a project. So we're going to go over to this plus button up here, plus project. You can give it a name. I'm just going to call mine Spring 2026 Workshop. You can name it whatever you want to do. And projects are basically like, if you think of like your Finder or your File Explorer, this is just like a folder where you're going to put multiple files within. Once I click continue, if you want to add other people to this to work on it with you, you can do that here. We don't need to do that today. So we can just click create project and it starts me in my project. Mine defaulted to favorite. If yours didn't and you want it to be favorited, you can add that up here so that it's easily accessible in your sidebar. And now let's actually create our file. So we're going to click this create option up here. And you'll see all of those options that we had before in that top. And we're going to click this first one, design. All right. And this is what Figma looks like. Looks like nothing, but it's gonna look a lot better when we start adding stuff, so don't worry. So let's just kind of go through all of these different options that we have in here. So this main area, which is the bulk of what you can see, this is like your canvas. This is where you're going to be adding all of your images, your frames, our text. We're going to be doing all of our editing right in here. Down here, we have our toolbar, and we'll be going through most of these tools in here. You'll notice that most of them also do have this down arrow right by them. If you click on that, you'll see that there's some more tools nested within them. The like keys that they show over here with like the letters, these are the keyboard shortcuts. So if you ever want to really speed up your workflow, highly encourage you to look at here to just kind of know what the keyboard shortcut is. That way you don't have to keep clicking between different things. On the right over here, this is where we have our kind of settings, properties type thing. This is going to dynamically change whenever we select something different. So right now it's pretty basic. It's just going to look at our page. This page background, this is that color that we're seeing right here. If we wanted it to be a different color, you would just change that here. And we'll go through color in a little bit. If I add an image and I click on the image, I'm going to get a bunch of image related settings over here so that I can further customize that image. The design tab is where we're going to be spending most of the day today. This is actual design settings. The prototyping one is adding that interactivity so that like if you click on a button in the prototype, it actually takes you to a different screen and stuff like that. And we'll be doing that all next week. The left side over here, we have a bunch of different organizational tools that we have. We have pages, we have layers, there's these different assets and stuff. And we'll get used to all of these. And then underneath where there's that Figma button up here, we do have that kind of typical like file edit view menu with a bunch of keyboard shortcuts as well in here. And we'll be going through a number of these as well. So you'll notice up here where it says untitled, this is your project file name. So if I want to change that, I just click inside of where it says untitled, and then you can write what you want it to be. In this one, we're going to make a coffee shop mobile app. So I'm just going to say coffee shop mobile app. And then when I hit enter, it just applies that change to the name. And if you ever want to change it again, you just click inside again and change it. Figma auto saves, so you don't have to worry about going file save or command or control S all the time. All right. So the basic kind of thing of Figma, the first thing to know is what is called a frame. So a frame you can access by clicking on this icon in your toolbar, which is the second one, or you can hit F on your keyboard and it'll activate the frame tool, except I was inside of my title there. If I'm click over here and I click F, you'll notice I switched to my frame tool, or you can click here. You have a couple of options. You can either click just once. That'll give you a perfect 100 pixel by 100 pixel square. Pixels are just basically a very small unit of measurement in design. It's like all of these little squares that go across your screen. And I'm just going to delete that frame and I'll go back. You can also click and drag to make a custom frame size. So if I were to go like this, I can kind of see the square rectangle, and I can just drop it wherever for the frame that I want. But the best thing to do is to use these presets over here. So because Figma is designed primarily for mobile apps, websites, these digital products, they have all of these presets so that you don't have to second guess like how big is a phone screen. You can just use the preset that they have here. So I'm going to use this iPhone 16 Pro one. And when you click that, it automatically adds that to our canvas. By default, it's going to give us a very generic name, just iPhone 16 Pro dash 1. If you want to change this, which I highly recommend that you do just to stay organized as we start adding a bunch of things, you can just double click inside of that name in the top left, and then you can edit what your frame name is. I'm going to name this account access. So this is going to be basically that screen that we see in a mobile app where it says log in, continue as guest, register. That's the first thing that we're going to be building. So we're going to be adding a bunch of different frames as we go along, and it's always super helpful to keep them organized. One way to do that is within our frame tool. So if you click on that down arrow, we'll have this section tool. So a section is just basically a visual grouping of your frames here. So if I want to add a section, if you ever want to zoom out in here, you can do Command or Control minus, and that zooms you out, or you can do Command or Control plus to go in. It's Command on Mac, Control on Windows. And so I'm just going to go about here, and I'm going to go and select my section tool. You can either do that by clicking down here or using that keyboard shortcut, which is Shift S. And then I'm just going to click and drag to place it somewhere with my frame inside. And then now this is just basically a way that I can group my related frames together. So you could do this by design. You could do this by an assets and components section where there's all these different kind of related elements. You could have it where it's one file for like your coffee shop, but then you have a section for your website, a section for your mobile app, a section for maybe like an iPad app, and having them all in this one file. And again, like the other ones, we can just double click inside where it says section 1 and rename it. So I'm just going to say this as my iPhone app. If you did not click and drag your section over your frame, it likely wasn't added to your section. If you ever want to move it around, you can just move it like so. And wherever you drop it, it'll stay inside. If as you start to move around, you kind of get lost a little bit and you want to make sure that you can kind of pan over to see something else, if you hold down the space bar and you click and drag, this is the move tool. So you're actually just moving like almost like your view, but you're not actually moving an element. So that can kind of help to move around. So we're gonna start working on that wireframe. So like this was our example. So we're gonna just build that for our account access screen here. And in order to make sure that we are placing things in a kind of standard way, we're gonna add a layout grid to this screen so that we make sure that we're placing things perfectly how we want it. So to add a layout grid, which they've renamed layout guide, and I am finding this out in real time with you right now. You want to click on your frame. So you can either do that by its name right here, or you can click on that over here in your layers panel. And then down here in your design tab for your settings, there's layout guide. Now I want to add one, so I'm going to click on this plus icon. Now by default, and I'll zoom in so that you can see it a little bit better, it's going to give you a 10 pixel grid with these kind of like light red lines. I personally don't like this, and I don't use it. I don't think it's super helpful. So I'm going to show you what I do. So when you click on this grid option right here, you'll see that you also have options for columns or rows. I'm going to click on columns, and we get a bunch of options for our columns right here. So I have found that columns are super helpful because it allows you to position things horizontally, and you don't have to worry about how many vertical things there are yet. So horizontal is your left to your right, and vertical is kind of top to bottom. We don't know how long our screen is going to be because you can scroll on websites and apps, and you don't want to like lock yourself into a design that is only the size of your iPhone because you do have the option to scroll. So by default, there's 5 columns, but if you click on that option, you'll see that you have a bunch of different options here. And we're going to go all the way up to 12 for 12 columns. So the reason we'd use something like 12 is because you can divide it by a bunch of other numbers. So before with 5, if we were to try to make symmetrical designs from left to right, The only way to do that with 5 columns is using all 5 columns. And there's no way I can split up 5 into 2 equal parts on left to right. When I go to all the way up to 12, I have a ton of options here. So I could place one element in each of these columns. So then I have 12 things side by side, or I could have things take up 2 columns, and then that would be 6 things side by side because 12 divided by 2 is 6. If I wanted to have things take 3 columns, that means I can put 4 things side by side and it's still symmetrical, and so on and so forth. Just a little bit of math. You can change the color here if you don't like the color of these things. I keep it as the red because it kind of just stands out. But if you don't like the red, you can change that. This first value right here is the actual color. So if you click on where this color option is, you can kind of click and drag to move what kind of color you want it to be. Either through here, you can change it to be like a blue or whatever you want. I'm just going to go back to the typical. And then the second option where it says 10 is how opaque it is. So that's 0% is like fully transparent. It's fully see-through. You actually wouldn't be able to see it. So if I take that down to 0, you actually don't see my lines, even though they're there. You could go all the way up to 100, which I would not recommend because it really stands out. And when you try to start to add things on top of it, it's going to be annoying. So I just stick it around the typical 10. For type here, this is going to be how do we want these to be laid out? So if I were to choose left, it's going to count 12 columns from the left to the right, and you can choose how wide they are. So in this case, they're 10 pixels wide, but I can increase that to maybe like 20 if I wanted the columns to be wider. Right is going to be the same thing, but it starts counting from the right side to the left. Center is going to be the same thing, but it starts counting from the center and then spreads out to the left and the right. And my favorite is stretch, just because it'll look at how many columns you want. It'll look at how wide you have your screen set to, and then it'll just automatically place them to make them equal so that you don't have to guess around with numbers of how wide you want your columns to be. Margin right here is going to be your distance between the left side of your frame and the leftmost column, and the right side of your frame and the rightmost column. So right now it's at 0, so that means that my layout grid is way to the side. There's no gap in between. But maybe I want to add like a 25 pixel margin so to give myself a little bit of white space on each side. It makes things feel like a little less cramped. You have to deal a little bit less when someone has like a very slight different phone size and then it gets clipped off or something like that. And then our gutter, this is going to be the space in between each of these columns. So right now there's 20 pixels, which makes all of our columns like really small. But I'm just going to reduce this down to 5. And then now I have 12 even columns with a little bit of white space on each side, and then a little bit of gap in between to give a little bit of breathing room if I were to have multiple elements side by side. Now, I have my column set up, but maybe I do want to add rows, right? Maybe I want to kind of make my own kind of grid that doesn't look like the grid paper you would use in math class like they had before. So I could add another one on top of this. To do that, I just still have my frame selected. So account access, you can click here to just make sure. Over here in our design tab, you should see that layout guide. You still see the 12 columns that we made. But if you click on the plus icon right here, you can add another one on top of it. So this one, I'm gonna do rows instead of our grid. So I just clicked right here and I did rows. Now, if you want to add some more kind of settings here, you just click on this icon to the left of it. And that opens up those settings like we saw before. Now, I'm going to set this a little bit differently because with our screen, we know how wide we're designing it for because devices have like a set size that we're targeting this way. But again, we can scroll on our app. So I want to set it up where that if I were to expand my frame to go longer down to kind of simulate that scrolling, that it's still adding rows for me. So I'm going to switch the count from 5 to auto. And this is just going to automatically add a bunch of rows. And by default, it's going to be stretched. So that's going to try to like just be one long row that's always the size of your screen. Not super helpful. So I'm going to switch it to top. The height, that's going to be how tall you want your columns to be, or your rows, excuse me. So let's say I put like 50. That looks pretty good. Offset is going to be how much space do you want from the top to that first one right here. It's kind of like our margin, but it's only specific to top because that's the type of rows that we're adding. So in this one, I'm going to add, let's say 25 pixels to also give some breathing room at the top, maybe accommodate for any sort of kind of like bar like this on a screen. And then gutter again is that distance between your rows. So I'm going to put 5 just to kind of make it look a little similar. So now that we have that, if I were to add another frame, so if I were to add another 16 Pro frame, you'll notice I don't have my layout guide here. And if I wanted to make that layout guide, I have to redo all of that work that we just did. So I'm going to show you how you don't have to do that. So if I were to go back to my account access frame right here, and we go down here to our layout guide settings, we can see our rows, we can see our columns. You'll see that there is this 4 kind of circles to the left of where we started adding. If you hover over it, it says apply styles. So Figma has 4 different types of styles that you can create. They're color, text, layout, and effects. And these are basically just ways where you create something of one of those once, and then you can save it, and then easily apply that to something else. So I'm going to click on this apply styles option. It'll look for, hey, what layout guide styles do you have in this file? And we don't have any because we haven't created any yet. So I'm going to click on that plus icon in here. And then we can give it a name and you can give it a description if you want to. I just make a descriptive name for this. So I would say something like 12 columns, comma, 50 pixel rows. And then I'm going to click create style. Now you'll notice when I do that, my layout guide here changes to just say what that is. Now, if I click on that, I can see that I have that specific style applied. I can click on this edit style if you want to actually change some of the settings, like maybe someone decides, hey, like the rows are too big or whatever, you can still go in and change it. There's also these eye icons. So maybe you've been working with this a little bit and you're like, I don't want to delete it. I just don't want to see it anymore. If you click on those eye icons, it just toggles the visibility off without you having to actually delete the thing and then remake it. If you do want to delete something, it's just the minus button, but I'm not going to do that. So now when I create my new frame, like over here, if I want to apply that layout guide style, I can click on that 4 circle menu again, and then I can see that I have that saved that I made before, this 12 columns, 50 pixel rows. And when I click on it, it just applies it. And then if I were to go in and actually make some edits, like I toggle off the rows, it's going to toggle it off for everywhere that I've applied that style. So it's super helpful to make things super reusable and that you're using across so that you just have to edit it once. You don't have to keep remaking things multiple times. Now, that little bit of a process is a little bit much at times. So an easy way to just duplicate this frame is if you hold down Option on your keyboard for Mac or Alt on Windows and you hover over where it says Account Access, you'll notice it's a little hard because the screen's a little small, but you'll notice as I start to hover over it, I get 2 cursors instead of one that's black and one that's white. Holding down Option and you hover over, this is your duplicate tool. So now if I just click and drag, it's going to make a copy of that frame with everything that's on it. Okay. So I'll show that again. So I'm holding down Option on my keyboard if you're on Mac. If you're on Windows, it's Alt. You hover over where that account access title is or whatever you named it, if you named it something else. And then you just click and drag and move it somewhere else. And then you have another copy. Cool. So we went through the layout style guide by actually clicking on the frame, doing all these things, and then saving it here. But maybe I'm creating something and I already I'm working with an established brand who has their exact colors, their exact fonts. They already know exactly what they want. If you click outside of here, so somewhere on your canvas, in me, this dark area, for you, if you're in the light theme, it's probably very light. You'll notice under design that there's these styles options. And if you click on the plus icon that's in the top right, you'll see those four different styles that I mentioned. So text, color, effect, layout guide. And we're going to add one for text and one for color right now. So let's say I know that I'm going to be using a specific green color a lot. I can click on color. We're going to give it a name. So I'm going to give this one a dark green as its name. And remember, I clicked outside, somewhere over here. Under styles, I clicked this plus icon, and then I clicked color and clicked dark green. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can change color in Figma. So this first one is going to be your actual color picker. So if you click on this color square right here, you get this option right here where you can change the hue to different colors and change where it is to kind of manually select like that. But you can also input what's called a hex code in here, and this is just a series of numbers and letters to simulate to kind of identify a specific color. And what I really like to do when I'm deciding colors, which is maybe not the like professional tried and true way to do it, is I use this website called realtimecolors.com. And this is a site where you can visualize your colors on an actual live site before you actually put in all of the work to create all of this stuff just to see how it looks. They have some 5 different options. So your text, your background, primary, secondary, accent. What I actually really like to do, you can click on this dice icon down here, or you can hit spacebar and it's a randomizer. And so it'll just switch all these colors and randomize. And whenever I'm starting a design that I'm just doing for fun, where I don't have like a set color palette already, I just go here and I just hit spacebar until I see something that I like. I'll be honest, not super official. So I just go like that, find the color, and then let's say I really like this accent color. If I click on here, you can see that hex code value. Another option is if you want a little bit more control, Adobe Color, which most of you, I believe, are probably going to be Annenberg students. You get access to this with your Creative Cloud subscription. And here you can change these different color themes with different color harmonies. You can kind of find these different color palettes, and all of these will have their hex code right here as well. Okay. But I have some colors that I picked out that we'll just add. So in the properties of my new color style where I named dark green, I'm going to click inside where it says this D8, 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 which is the hex code for this boring gray. And we're going to change it to 355 E3B. You can also go to one of those websites I just showed and pick a random color and put that in. So I'm using 355 E3B, and I'm going to click Create Style, and you can now see that I have my dark green color style right here. Now I'll show you a little bit about text. So with styles, I'm going to click that plus icon again. Instead of clicking color this time, I'm going to click text. And again, I can give it a name. So I'm going to give this name button text, because this is going to be the text that I'm going to use for all the buttons on this app. Under properties, the first option that you get is going to be your font family. So what actually font do you want to use? What I like to do for fonts is go to Google Fonts. So fonts.google.com. This is a big font library of almost 2,000 different types of fonts that are already interconnected with Figma. So anything you see here will also be in Figma. So I just like to find fonts that I like here and then go back to Figma and find it in my thing here. There is the option to search. So right underneath this pop-up where it says enter, which is the default, I can change that, and I'm going to use one called Work Sans. So if I just type in work, we see Work Sans. You may see this notice down here. with Figma needs permissions to access fonts installed on your computer. If you have specific fonts that you have installed that you want to use in your design, you just click allow and do the steps that they have, and then Figma can access the fonts on your computer that you can also use in here. I don't believe you have to do this step with the desktop app because it's already on your desktop. It can already access it all. But I think the browser, you do need to like set it up. So I'm just going to click on Work Sans. Right here where it says regular, this is where you change the font weight. So how bold it is. Do you want it to be thin, light, regular, medium, bold, black? Or if you want it to be italicized as well. So I'm just going to set mine to be semi-bold so that it's a little bit, it stands out a little bit. And then this option right here where it says 12, this is your font size. So how big these are all going to be. You can either pick from one of the presets right here that they have when you click on this arrow, or you can just type in the number if you know what it is. So I'm going to do 20-point font and hit enter. It's really nice as you do get this little preview. So you can kind of see how it's going to look. Line height is going to be, if you're going to have a paragraph with multiple lines, how much space do you want in between each line? Which we can just leave for auto. And then letter spacing is how much space do you want between each individual letter? So if you want it to be like a little bit more spread out, you can do that. Or if you want to create, I know a lot of modern design likes to kind of squish kind of letters together. You can do that and kind of make it shorter. And I think you can go negative to make it kind of overlap too. But we'll just leave it as is. Okay. And if I am done, I can click Create Style. So for my account access screen, we're going to kind of simulate a screen where you open up the app and it's going to ask you if you want to log in or register or whatever you want to do. And so let's start off by actually wireframing what this is. So remember, that's going to be focusing on your layout, your composition. We're not going to worry about the colors yet, but then we're going to start applying that in the design. So I'm kind of envisioning like our coffee shop logo kind of up here. But let's say I don't have that yet. We can create a kind of a box with two lines that cross, and that simulates that there's going to be an image. This is kind of like the standard notation for there'll be an image here. We just don't have that image yet. Okay. So to do that, I am going to click on my rectangle tool in my toolbar. You can also hit R on your keyboard. So I'm going to click there. And I'm going to just zoom in a little bit and use space and click and drag to kind of move around. And I'm kind of thinking, we have our 12 columns. Maybe it would be nice to have a logo that's like 6 columns wide. So I'm just going to find somewhere and just click and drag over 6 columns. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, and then something that is kind of square, or it might not be exact, but just click and drag to make your rectangle. Now you'll notice that when we made our rectangle, it says rectangle in our design tab, and it's going to have a bunch of different options for our rectangle right here. Right now, we can see that the dimensions are the width is 174 and the height is 160. If you wanted to make it like a perfect square, you can make those numbers the same. Additionally, if when you're drawing your rectangle, if you want it to be a perfect square, you just hold down Shift as you're clicking and dragging, and you'll notice that line through it. That just means that it's going to be the perfect width and height to make a perfect square. Okay, so I'm just going to place this somewhere in the middle where it's 6 columns wide, and you'll notice that it does have some snapping to it. So as I move from column to column, these kind of orange red lines will show up. And yeah, and that just kind of means that we're snapping right to the column. So I'm just going to go back kind of here and just make it back to my 6 and kind of just play around. Okay. Now, in order to draw the lines between, we're going to use the pen tool. So that is the next one in our toolbar. You can also put P on your keyboard. And so when you click on the pen tool, you'll just go to somewhere on your square. So I'm going to go up here, kind of in the top left, and I'm going to click. The weird thing about Figma's pen tool is you don't click and drag. You just click and release. And then without holding down the button on the mouse, you can move to create your tool. If you kind of click and drag, it's going to start creating this weird curved thing. Encourage you to play around with it. But if you want to create a straight line, you want to make sure that you just click once, don't hold it, and then just drag your mouse or your trackpad, whatever you're doing, to where you want it to go. And then when you're done, you just click again. Now it is going to try to keep going. So if I were to start going like this, it's going to try to keep going. But if I just hit enter, it cuts it off. Okay. So we've created that line. Now let's create the one that crosses on the other side as well. So going back to your pen tool, so either clicking on it in your toolbar or pressing P on your keyboard, clicking in the bottom left of your square, not holding down the mouse, just moving it to the top right. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then just clicking where you want it to end, and then hitting return or enter on your keyboard to actually apply that. So the thing is that all of these are separate objects. They're all separate elements. And we can see that in our layers panel where we have rectangle 1, vector 1, and vector 2. If you created multiple, you might see some different numbers. But if I want to make sure that when I move them around, because right now if I click here and I just move, it's just going to move like the background. It's not going to move the lines with it. If I want to make sure that they all move together, I want to place them in what's called a group. And that's just another way to group elements together so that they're associated with each other. So to do that, you want to select all of your elements. So in this case, I can just click and drag over all of these. And when I release, you'll notice that all 3 of these right here are highlighted, which means that they're all selected. You can also, if you would like to, go over here and hold down Shift and select. So you click on the top one, hold down Shift, click on the bottom one, and it will select all the ones in between. You can also do hold down Command on Mac or Control on Windows and select each one individually. Now to actually place them in a group, there is a keyboard shortcut. It is Command G on Mac or Control G on Windows. And so when you do that, you create this group. If for some reason you just don't want to use the keyboard shortcut, if you go underneath the Figma icon and you do the object group selection. Now, again, Figma doesn't give us the greatest default names, so it's just group 1. I'm going to double click here and change this to image so that I know that this is going to be an image. You can also call it logo. You can call it whatever you want. I just try to do it where it's like indicative of what it actually is so that it's easier to find. So we are going to make those kind of like pretty typical round pill shape buttons, like you see kind of all over the place. It's super common right now. So that's going to be a combination of shapes, some colors, some text. So kind of bringing everything together right now. So I'm going to use my R on my keyboard. You can also click on rectangle here. And we're going to make our buttons. And I think I'm going to have them be like this size. You can pick whatever size you want, but mine are going to be 1 row tall and 8 columns wide. And when I release, you'll see that I get that. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So I'm Command plus. If you're on Windows, it's Control. Now with our rectangle, we have some options over here in our panel that I want to make sure that we explore a little bit. So the first ones are in our position. So alignment is going to be where do you want this element to be aligned in the context of the frame that it's in, right? So right now, our rectangle 2, which I'm going to double click here and rename this to login button, just so I know what this is going to be. So our login button is within our account access frame. So if I click on this first option right here in alignment, it's going to go to the way left of my frame. And it's going to be completely flush to the left side of my frame because my login button is within this frame and I'm saying go as far left as you can. The flip of that is far right, if you want it to be all the way over there. And then the middle one is going to be if you want it to be perfectly centered within your frame. So when I click that one, it's going to align it perfectly centered within the frame. There'll be the same distance on the left and the right. These options over here do the same thing, but with your vertical axis. So going up and down. So this one is going to be your aligning to the very top. So if I click on that now, it's going to jump way to the top of my frame. If I click on the opposite, it's going to jump way to the bottom. If I do the one in the middle, it's going to go where it's perfectly centered, going top to bottom. And that's these options right here. I'm just going to place it back kind of down here where I think I'd want it. There's these position options right here. So as I mentioned before, like there's those pixels for how wide and tall your frame is. And if you were to click on your account access frame at the top, you can see under dimensions the width and the height. So it's 402,874. So that is 402 pixels wide and 874 pixels tall. And then here, this is going to be where is, I think it's this top left corner positioned. So this one is 84 pixels over here, and it's 524 pixels down from the top. So that's right here. We have this thing called constraints. This can get a little tough at times. We're going to go through it later today if we have time for it. If not, I'll talk a little bit more about it next week. But basically, this is a way that you can tell Figma this element is where it needs to be in relation to a certain part of this frame. So right now it's center, which means that if I were to expand my frame in any way, it's going to try to keep it the same relationship. It's a little confusing. We'll explore it a little bit when we know a little bit more. Rotation is if you want to rotate it around on the center. Pretty simple. And then these are just some quick tools for how you want to rotate. So this one's going to be just 90 degree to the right. And then this is if you want to flip it left to right. Doesn't make much difference right now because we have a pretty simple gray square. And then this one is just flipping it top and bottom. Down under here for appearance, this is where I think is going to be more exciting. We have corner radius. So corner radius is your setting for how smooth you want these corners to be. Right now, you'll notice that they go to a point, right? So it's sharp, it goes to a point. And the corner radius is going to start kind of cutting off things on these corners to make it smoother. So a neat little trick with most things in Figma, if you hover over the icon or like the letter for that input and you just click and drag, it'll change the value for you. So I'm dragging to the right, which is going to increase my corner radius or increase how smooth my corners are. And if I drag it to the left, it's going to decrease it. And again, that's just hovering over his icon, clicking on it, and then dragging in a certain way. You can also put a specific number if you know what number. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find the exact number you're looking for just because it depends on how big your thing is. So like for like a really big image and you want it to be like a rounded corner, you're gonna have to increase this corner radius number more than you would for like this rectangle. So sometimes that just click and drag is nice to kind of figure out where does it need to be. And it looks like we need to go to like 28-ish. 30 is nice too, to make it that perfect round kind of pill shape. You additionally have the option to, if you're zoomed in far enough, you'll see that there's these circles right by all of those corners. And if you click and drag it, it'll do the same thing. Now, by default, it's going to apply this to all of our corners. So if I kind of zoom out, you'll notice it did it for these ones over here as well. If you want to get more granular, you want to get more specific, you click on this icon right here where it's those kind of, each of those corners are shown with this line. And then you can change it for your top left, your top right, your bottom left, and your bottom right. Now, just so that it looks a little bit easier on all of our eyes, let's turn off the visibility of this layout grid. So I'm going to click over here in my kind of blank kind of canvas area. I'm going to go under my layout guide styles, which I see here. I'm going to hover over the one I created and click on this kind of slider icon on the right. And then for both of these, I'm just going to click the eye icon to turn off the visibility. I'm going to click back on my rectangle, and there's two different options for your color here. One of them is going to be your fill, and then the other one's going to be your stroke. So fill is going to be the kind of background color of this shape. So in this case, it's like the actual color of our rectangle. Stroke is going to be if you want there to be like a border around. So if I were to click on the plus right here, you'll notice it adds this default, 1 pixel black line all around my shape. That's just your stroke. And I'll show you what that looks like right now, how to play around with this. We're not going to keep it. So if you don't want to exactly follow along, you don't have to. So with your stroke options, you do have a color picker, like I've shown you before. You do have that opacity as well if you want it to be a little bit more subtle. So you can kind of change how transparent it is. For position, there's going to be where basically you want to calculate where this stroke thickness gets added. So inside is going to be inside your actual shape, which means that when you create your shape, it's just going to be with that size. And then now if I increase my weight, it's going to add more to the inside of my shape. If I switch this to outside and I increase this, it's now going to add more to the outside of the shape. And my actual rectangle isn't changing how much I'm seeing of this gray that we have right now. Center is going to take whatever value you have and split it in half and put half of it on the outside and half of it on the inside. So it does kind of both at the same time. Now, I don't want this, so I'm just going to click on this minus icon to get rid of it. But that's just under the stroke settings right here. Then the other one is that fill. So this is going to be the actual color of our shape. Now, I could use this color picker again, but we've already created that dark green color style, and I just want to apply that. So it's the same thing like we did with the layout guide, where you just click on this four circle button right here, and then you click on the color that you created, and it's just going to automatically apply to that. So now let's actually add the text for our button right here. So this is going to be our login button. So to add text, you can either click T on your keyboard or you can click on this T icon in your toolbar. And this is your text. And it is going to give you this kind of crosshair. And you have two options here. So if you click and drag, it's going to create a text box, which you can write inside like so. And then it's only going to be contained in this text box. It's like a fixed size text box. But if you activate your text icon, so T, or click on that, and you just click somewhere, this is going to be a dynamically sized text box. So as I start typing, it's going to expand or shrink my text box based on what text I have in there. So in this case, I'm just going to type in login. Now, something that can be a little tricky is we're actively typing right now, and you can see that I still have that text cursor just like blinking, which means that I'm still within my text box. So if I were to try to change anything in terms of my settings or stuff like this, it's going to apply to like that one non-existent character that's right after my text. But if I actually want to apply it to everything within the text box, I can just click outside of my text box. And you'll notice now that I still get this kind of rectangle around it. And there's like this dotted line. It tells me how big it is. This means that I'm selecting the text box as a whole. So now if I go over to my typography settings, this is our font, our text, and I click on this four circle menu, you'll see that I have my button text that we created before. And when I click on that, it's going to apply to everything within my text box. If I were to do that again, like over here, and by default, it is going to do with whatever you did last. So I'm just going to make some changes here real quick to show you. Something like so. If I'm within my text box and I'm seeing that kind of blinking still in this one, and I try to apply this, it'll say it did, but nothing's happening in here. And that's because it's only applying to that like non-existent thing right at the end. So you want to make sure that if you want to apply it to everything inside and you're seeing this, that you always click outside first. And then you make the changes that you want to see. So now I'm going to place my login text inside my button. So I'm just going to click and drag to move it somewhere on top of it. It doesn't matter where on top. And if you remember before when we had these buttons right here with the alignment, and it was looking at what is what's called the parent element. So in this case, login is directly underneath our account access right here. And so it's looking at the size of this, and then it's going to align it to that. So in this case, it's aligning to the frame. However, if I select both my text, and then let's say I shift click on my login button, so I've selected both of these, you'll notice when it says two selected here, now these alignment tools, this is going to be how you align them in relation to each other. So now if I were to click align left, the left side of my text and the left side of my rectangle are going to be together. If I do align right, same thing happens on the right. It's not in relation to the frame anymore because I have two things selected. It's just going to be in relation to each other. So super nice way to kind of group them and then click center to make sure that your text and your background is perfectly centered all across. You don't have to like zoom in and try to get pixel perfect manually. Now, the only thing left to do here is our text color and our background color are both pretty dark. So they're both hard to read. This is an accessibility concern, obviously. It's also just, everyone won't be able to really read this. So if you click on your text box here and you scroll down, you'll see that the fill color is just pure black. And so we're going to want to change that to something else. So if I click on, let's say, this color picker, I'm going to change what I want to do. If there's already a color on your screen that you just want to replicate, you click on this eyedropper tool, and then you can select somewhere else. So if it has to be in your canvas. So if I hover over my dark green, it'll say it's my dark green color. If I hover over this, it's going to be white, and I can just click, and it'll automatically change my fill color to what I selected. And that's using our eyedropper tool right here. So we're going to work on kind of building out the rest of this account access screen. Um, and this will give you some exposure to some cool kind of parts of Figma that kind of reduce some of that manual work and reduce some maybe like you need to find an image, but let's say you don't want to like have to hassle with image copyright or going out and taking your own pictures or stuff like that. By default, Figma has a certain kind of tool set. This is just what comes with it. But like many other applications, people build what are called plugins. And these are just additional functionality that you can use with Figma that just doesn't come installed right away. So in order to access your plugins, you can either click on this Figma icon and go to where it says plugins, or you can right click somewhere on your screen, and then there's this plugins options right here. Does the same thing. Now, I have used some before, so you'll see the recent ones, but you'll probably just see manage plugins. So if you click on manage plugins, this will allow you to search for different plugin options that are here. You can use it by their name. You can do maybe like if you want to just search for like an image thing, you can just search image and you'll see related things. The first one that I want us to look at is this one called Unsplash. So if you just search Unsplash here, Unsplash is basically a service where you can get stock images from. The nice thing about Unsplash is you don't need to have a subscription. They do have like a paid version if you do want like really, really, really professional photos, but the free versions have like really nice things anyways. And the cool thing about Unsplash is all of the images are provided by the photographers. And so you don't have to worry about kind of copyright with them. You don't have to worry about attributing or paying to someone. They do ask that you attribute, saying like, hey, this photo is from this person, got it on Unsplash. If you're going to be kind of publishing something. But in the cases of like you're just making this right now, you can just put one in. So if I click on Unsplash, it'll load and you get this little pop-up panel right here. And this is going to be your image kind of search, right? So I just want to look for like a coffee shop one. So I'm just going to search coffee shop. And I can see a bunch of different coffee shop images show up. The ones that have this plus icon in the top left and say unlock, those are the ones that are in the premium part if you want to pay for Unsplash. Anything that doesn't have that is free to use. So maybe on my kind of like welcome screen, I want to do something like this one. This one looks pretty cool. You can pick whatever image you want. If you just click on that image, it'll show up in your Figma file. It is going to probably be very, very big. So I'm going to command minus. You can control minus if you're on Windows. And I am just going to resize this to be kind of similar to my account access frame here. So I'm just going to click and drag and move it to somewhere around. And then if I want to resize the image, it's just these kind of grabber tools over here. And if I hold down Shift, it'll keep the same aspect ratio that it had before. Yes. Okay. So I have this image. I'm just making sure it's covering my whole frame. And you'll notice that it's not confined to my frame in any way. And that's because if you look over here in the layers panel, it's not within my frame for account access. So if I want it to be, all I have to do is click and drag and move it over here. So I'm going to click, drag, and move it within my account access and at the very bottom. And you'll notice that account access has this blue kind of highlight around it. That means that I'm within that frame. And then the indent between the this side and the white means that I'm going like a level in. So when I do that, it's now going to be confined to my frame. And anytime I move it around, it's not going to kind of clip over. And also now it's behind everything else in my frame. Okay. So I just place my Unsplash image, and then over here in the layers panel, just making sure that it's within our account access frame group, and then it's at the very bottom. So you'll notice that with our designs so far, particularly relating to our kind of button and the image in the background, all of them are really sharp colors, so it's a little bit hard to kind of see where I can click, what I can do. And so we're going to play around with some effects to make that a little bit more obvious, make it look a little bit better too, and not so harsh on the eyes. So I'm going to click on my image here. So it's this unsplash, blah, 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 blah. You can either click on it here, you can click on it in your actual thing. And then we're going to go down here to effects. And if I click on the plus icon, I'll get this little effects pop-up. And where it says drop shadow, if I click on there, I'll have these different effect options. So, pretty standard ones that have been around for quite some time are inner shadow, drop shadow, layer blur, and background blur. The noise, the texture, and the glass are a little bit newer. So, just kind of proof that Figma likes to update things and keep things a little bit more modern. So, for this image, I want to make it a little bit blurred just because that'll help differentiate it from the stuff that's in the front. So I'm going to choose my layer blur option. And you'll notice that when I do that, it already does like a little bit of a good job about making it a little bit further in the back and not so strong. So I did layer blur. You have progressive and uniform blur. So uniform is just going to be across the entire image. It's just going to be blurred the same. Progressive is if you want like a gradient blur. So if you wanted maybe like up here to be like super sharp, super clear, but you wanted like down here to be like super blurry, super blurred out, you could use progressive to do kind of like a gradient blur. In this case, I just want to increase this uniform blur. So I am just going to do that right here. So you can go up to something. I feel like 7 does a pretty good job, like so. We also can add a little bit of maybe like a drop shadow here to kind of show like that the button kind of feels like it's off of the page a little bit, like off of the screen, create some depth and make it look like it's clickable. So if I click on where it says my login button, so it's my rectangle, I can go to my effects. and click the plus icon. And then drop shadow is the one that we're going to want to use. So X is going to be how far to the left or the right do you want the shadow to appear? It's a little bit hard to see right now, so I'll go in a lot. And I'm going to just quickly change the color. So right now it's this black. I'm just going to increase the opacity so you can see it. And obviously it's a black background, so I'll do red. So with my drop shadow, X is going to be, when you go more positive, it's going to be more to the right. And when you go more negative, it's going to be more to the left, like so. Same thing with the Y, but just top to bottom. So the higher you go, the further down it'll go. The lower your number, the higher up it'll go. The blur is actually going to be how kind of blurry it gets. So you can either like increase it a lot so it kind of looks almost like a glow effect. Or if you decrease it down to like 0, it just kind of looks like another sharp rectangle that's after it. And so then we'll put it to like 6. And then your spread is going to increase it on all sides. So if I start doing that, you'll notice it kind of expands, kind of like that outside stroke did when we looked at that before. So typically I don't use that much spread. 4, 4, and 6 generally looks pretty good. And then I like to kind of decrease the opacity to something that looks good. It takes some practice. And then for the color, I like to pick the color of the actual element and then either make it like slightly darker or slightly lighter so that it stands out a little bit. You can kind of create something cool like that. And so I'll go back to those settings if you would like. Over here with our styles, you might have noticed, as I've mentioned a couple of times, that there's text, there's color, there's effects, and there's layout guides. There's no shape, for example. There's no image, there's no video, stuff like this. But sometimes we want a design element to appear across all of our screens. So in the case of our mobile app, we want probably like a navigation bar at the bottom where we can flip between the different screens of our app. And it's all going to have the same design. It's all going to have the same kind of functionality across each screen. So we don't want to have to remake it several times and then keep updating it in these different places. This is where we start using what are called components and instances and variants. So the component is going to be the actual design element that you're creating. So if we were to create our navigation menu, I'm going to do this in a new section. So remember that's within our frame tool. You can do Shift S. I'm going to create a new section and I'm going to rename it components. It is super helpful to have your components on the same page as your design because next week when we start exploring prototyping, when you prototype from your component, it applies to all of the instances of your component across your design. Okay. Might not make a ton of sense right now, but we'll get to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my navigation menu. So to do that, I'm just going to take my rectangle tool and I'm going to create a kind of rectangle, kind of where I'm expecting it to be on all of my screens. So maybe just that size, a certain rectangle that is the width of my screen, however tall I want it to be. So I'm going to then drag this up into my component section because this is going to be our component. I'm going to double click where it says rectangle 2 and we're just going to call it background because this will be the background for our navigation menu. And let's change the color, that fill, to that dark green that we created before. So as a reminder, when you have that rectangle selected, you just go to your fill settings. You click on the 3 or the 4 circle menu, and you click on dark green. And you should get that dark green color that we created. Now, we want to have some icons here that have like a home screen, and then let's say a kind of like a location screen, a menu screen, maybe a cart, different things that we have for this coffee shop app where we can order some coffee and a mobile order. So similar to the images that we use with Unsplash, I don't create the icons just from scratch every time. I just use a plugin with people who've uploaded other icons before. So right click somewhere to get back to your plugins, or you can remember go to that Figma icon and go to plugins. You'll go to your manage plugins. And then I like this one called Iconify. So Iconify. And I'll click on that and bring it up. Now you'll see something a little bit like this. And there's all of these different icon sets. Material is a design system made by Google. If you want to use kind of Google's kind of icon styles, they did have different options down here for these other sets and stuff. I typically just like to search for something. So in this case, we maybe want a home screen button. So if we just look up home and search, you'll see all of these different icon options that people have created for your home screen. Now, there's a lot of different options. You can choose kind of whatever you want that fits your design. The biggest thing with kind of like a best practice in UX design is if you're going to pick a certain type of icon, that when you pick other icons, that they're of the same style. So in this case, right, it's like boxy filled in. If I wanted to pick, let's say, a cart one, I'd want to find a boxy filled in one to kind of keep it consistent. If I want to do one that has like a thin border outline, then I should do that for the other ones as well. I'm going to do this kind of filled in one that has some curved edges here, and I can just click that and it should, oh, it doesn't get added automatically anymore. So I'm just going to click and drag onto here. So I just clicked and dragged and moved it onto my design. It automatically comes within its own frame. If you don't want it to be in that frame, I typically take them out. You can just click and drag to move it like above it and move it outside of that frame group. And then I just delete that frame. So now I just have my icon and I don't have to worry about clicking a couple times or accidentally selecting the frame and kind of messing some stuff up. Okay, so I have my home icon. Now let's add some more. So I'm going to do plugins. I can also do run last plugin. So when you're using your plugins, if you close one and then you have to reopen it for whatever reason, you can just run the last one. It'll just pick up right where you left off. So let's just search location, because maybe we want like a location screen, and we can look at the different options that they have for us here. One that matches pretty nicely to this, which is kind of slightly rounded and filled in, is something like this one. So I found that one. Let's look up a cart icon and finding one that looks a little similar, maybe something like this. And then maybe we'll have like an info or contact page. Generally, you've kind of decided what screens you're going to have before you decide what icons you need, because you need an icon for the screen. So I might just look up information and I'll find one that looks kind of within our kind of idea here. I'm going to take all of these and move them outside of their frames. The one thing that's a little bit tricky is our cart one has three different of these vector objects. So I've mentioned pixels a couple of times, which are these. If you zoom really into Figma, you can see each individual pixel, these squares. Those are what makes up most like images and your screens. That's why if you have like an image and you try to like stretch it really big to fill a space, it gets really blurry. That's because each of these squares is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're losing that detail. Vectors, on the other hand, are created with lines and shapes. And so vectors, when you expand them, you can expand them as big as you want, and it will never lose that detail. It'll always look sharp, it always look crisp, it always looks clean. So for things like icons or logos or stuff like that, you're typically creating them with vectors, whereas things like kind of images that you're taking or whatnot is typically going to be a pixel-based image. So I am going to select my three for my cart. And we didn't go through these yet, but I'll kind of briefly mention them, is that we have these options up here when you select three. So under this kind of double square, this three or this down arrow, You have what are called these booleans. These are just different ways that you can combine multiple things. So union is going to combine them all into one. Subtract is going to kind of take some out of the one on top. There's intersect, where with two overlapping shapes, you only keep what's overlapping between the two of them. Exclude is the opposite of that. So with two ones, I encourage you to play around with it. Just overlap two elements and choose which one to kind of see what happens. I'm just going to click flatten right here. What this does is it takes my three layers and just makes them into one. So I can see now that my three went down to one, and anytime I move it around, it's just one. And I don't have to worry about selecting all of these. So I'm just going to move that outside of its frame group, and same with this one, and delete all of those frames. And I'll just hit delete. Now, when I select multiple of my things, all of these are black icons. So I've selected them all. I just clicked and dragged around them. Under my fill section, you'll notice that it shows my black color. So what I can do from here is I can just change this color, maybe let's say to white, and it's going to change all of my elements at the same time. So if you have multiple elements selected, it'll say what color or colors are selected, and then you can change them to whatever you want them to be. So that way you don't have to click on each icon and change their color. Now let's just place these icons on top of our background somewhere and pay a little close attention to the first one on the left and the last one on the right. So kind of place those kind of exactly where you want those to be, where you're thinking, because I'm going to show you some tricks as well. So, like we did before with when we selected both the text and the button, and then we perfectly centered them both vertically and horizontally, you can create even space in between elements as well. So if I select all of my logos here, my icons. So it's easier right now to do it over here, where I click on the top one, I hold down Shift, and then click on the bottom one. Over here, I don't want to mess with these ones right here. This is going to be your left, your kind of center here, and your right, because this will kind of push them all together in a certain location. But here, if I click on this middle one on this right, it's going to align them all centered like so. You'll notice that some icons, depending on how they're set up, might have a little bit of extra blank space that you have to kind of navigate around, but it gets you pretty close. And then if you click on this button on the way right, where it's like the square with like three columns in it, this is more actions. So you have distribute vertical spacing. So this is if you're selecting things that are like in a list top to bottom, and you want to make sure that there's enough or the same space in between each of those elements from top to bottom, you can do that. We're going to do distribute horizontal spacing. So that's going to make sure that there's between our home and our location icon is the same amount of space as between the location and the cart, and is the same space as between our cart and our info. So when I click that, it's just evenly spaced out like so. And then tidy up, which we can't do anymore because we've done that, does both of these two things at the same time. Now I want you to highlight all of your icons and your background, and then we're going to Command G or Control G to group them. You can also go to the Figma icon and then in the object menu, and then click group selection. And I'm going to rename where it says group one to navigation menu and hit enter. So the next week we'll go through these components. We'll go through some animation and prototyping of the design. Just so that we have more to play with, I'll probably provide you with some starting files so that you're not forced over the next week to create a bunch of screens and elements and stuff like that. Highly encourage you to play around with it in practice if you do want to do something on your own. But just in case you don't have the time, I'll provide you with some starting stuff.